Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. In this one I want to give my thoughts, kind of a discussion on The Acolyte as we kind of head into the kind of premiere in just about 2 weeks time. It's getting to the point now where I'm pretty excited for it now, having maybe not quite been that way after say like the first trailer and stuff like that, but seeing some of the recent promo videos, especially like stuff like the second trailer and stuff that's come out even just very recently, I'm definitely building my hype towards this, in that I think the inherent interest with this show is that it's a show set in a pretty blank period of time, where sure, the main one of the talking points is going to be like it's a High Republic show, but it's not so close to the novels that matters too much, and then it's not close enough to the prequels to where the connections are going to be like so huge. So it very much is a sort of time period within a time period where I'm super excited to see how a seemingly big budget show like this just attempts to tell a story when, minus I'm guessing some kind of background characters, like I'm guessing you know some of the Jedi Council members, if we ever see the Jedi Council, and someone like say Vernestra, who even then I don't expect there to be too much connection really made there. We're not really going to know who most of these characters are, and the only thing I would say we're probably building towards from a setting up the Phantom Menace perspective is what specifically is going to happen when it comes to Sith Lords, and that the lineage effectively leading into Palpatine. It leaves them a lot of space to work with here to make something super interesting, where, continuity matters here, of course, but it's not so interlinked and intertwined like, say, Ahsoka was, where if you hadn't seen the Clone Wars and all of Rebels, like, you might not know exactly what's going on in Ahsoka. Whereas with this one, you can go in, I think, without having seen probably the prequels or having read any High Republic, and you're going to be fine because it is something kind of to itself on its own. But there are some things that you want to see that will probably benefit if you've read the High Republic, and it's going to set up some stuff for later on in the prequel era. So yeah, some of the details here is, of course, it's going to premiere June 4th, and we're getting a 2-episode premiere. I believe the series has 8 episodes for the season, so that's, good. We start off with 2, and then we'll have, 6 weekly episodes, I'm guessing, unless they announce that there's another double parter or whatever. But that's a nice way to do it. I think that's always a good thing to do. In this case, a lot of the times it feels like they know how many episodes, how much content they're going to lead with, and so that'll probably leave us at a pretty nice point. So that'll be pretty exciting. The details that we know for sure: this is specifically 100 years before the Phantom Menace. So it is meant to be effectively the last kind of period or kind of mini era of the High Republic, because the High Republic, from a timeline perspective, effectively is deemed as properly ending. What was it like? It's like 100 BBY. So I think the way that works is the Phantom Menace is 32 BBY. So this show is 132 BBY. So 100 BBY is like, 30 years after this show, so 70 years before the Phantom Menace. That's when the High Republic is deemed as having ended, for sure, and we're into that sort of Twilight of the Republic style era. So that's just an interesting one. And then when it comes to the other side of things, not the prequel side, but the actual full-on High Republic side, the first High Republic novel, Light of the Jedi, where you'd start off if you were getting into them, that is set 200 years before the Phantom Menace. So 100 years before this show, effectively. This is the other side of it. Yeah, 100 years after all of the novel stuff. And this is why you don't have to stress yourself out trying to read and recap all of the High Republic stuff, because 100 years is enough time where only long-lived species are going to be around. So, you know, some of the council members are going to be here, of course, as far as we're aware. So, was it like Yoda, Yariel Poof, Oppo Rancisis, and Yaddle? I might be misremembering one or two of them. But those are like pretty much some of the only characters that are actually going to be kind of connected in a way that we know, connecting all these eras because they live so long. Otherwise, yeah, like Vernestra Rowe is the only novel-specific character that we're being told is in the show right now. There might be others as we go on, but that's really it. And even then, because the High Republic is, the novels are still telling their main story, we don't know how that era of the story kind of comes to an end. So I'd be really surprised if Vernestra is referencing stuff that like effectively almost spoils the ending of the High Republic. So I think beyond just that, I guess Vernestra survives all the books. That's the only real reveal here. Are we going to be talking about the Nihil and referencing Starlight Beacon and all of this stuff? I don't really think so. Maybe she will allude to the fact that like 100 years ago things were pretty bad, but we got through it. And now we're setting up the next big threat for the Jedi here. That's probably the angle that we're kind of going for here as the Jedi kind of get into this position where the fall is like about to happen. And I'm guessing how they handle this kind of potential encounter with Sith Lords sets the stage for them being a little blind to what's actually kind of going on. So that's the situation that we're in, where like I'm caught up when it comes to the novels of the High Republic. Haven't read a lot of the recent comics, but I think the novels are where most of the main storytelling is taking place. So now let's with all that kind of preamble out of the way, let's get into sort of what we kind of have here. I don't have too many screenshots or visuals, but I have enough here that it should be at least somewhat interesting. So here's the main kind of poster that we have, of course. So, of course, the really obvious stuff in the background, this is the truly exciting stuff, is that the Acolyte of the title is apparently this character, May, who is Master Soul here, his former apprentice. Now, as we go through this, there is a theory that seems to be all but confirmed that likely the actress here for May is playing two characters and that there is a twin situation involved here. And there's one specific shot from one of the promos where it is very clear that Master Soul interacts with a character who looks like this, but they don't have a clue what's going on. But then there's like another situation where Master Soul interacts with a character who looks like this, and it's like, oh, the fight is on. So either there's a multiple personality thing going on here, or it is twin sisters. So that is a major kind of thing that I'm excited to see how they go about doing that, because you can definitely look, I think, at a lot of the trailers for this show and think that, like, okay, it looks interesting, but like I'm not quite seeing why this is a major show necessarily. But some of the stuff that there's the potential for with what's happened here is fascinating because of how a lot of the plot elements seem like they're going to link together. Of course, our kind of Sith Lord character here, I guess, they haven't really like noted what we should refer to this character as yet. But the implication is that, well, they're directly referring to May as the Acolyte. So I doubt there's going to be multiple layers of Acolytes. So for sure, at the very least, this is a Sith apprentice or a Sith master here. Darth something or other. That has to be the implication, I think, right now, is that this is a Rule of Two Bane line Sith Lord who we don't know about. My assumption at the moment probably would be that this is the Apprentice, and that if you take Legends stuff into account, Darth Tenebris probably should be the Sith Master at this point in time. This is probably his present apprentice, maybe prior to finding Plagueis. And so I think the hope that a lot of people have is that if we really go and explore the dark side stuff in this show, that it will get to a point where we introduce the Sith Lords of the era, and we maybe, use this guy as a potential kind of Sith Lord candidate, or like someone who is the current apprentice, has a Darth title, but maybe this character gets offed and we actually build to this kind of crazy reveal maybe at the end of the season, or if they do a season 2, and we actually lead to the debut of Darth Plagueis. Because that would be a major thing for a show to do. To camera pans over, your name is Darth Plagueis. Whatever way they do it, like if they do it accurately to Legends and we pan over and we see Immune and it's Higo Damask, that would be really exciting. But anyway, the whole point here is that, okay, so we have a masked Sith Lord, so they're not focusing too much on what species are they or something like that, though this is one of those ones where, because of some leaks and stuff like that, I think we basically know the identity of this character. I won't go into it here, just because I don't think any of the trailers have directly said this, but there is one character in the trailer who seems a little bit disconnected from a lot of what's going on, who it feels like it's kind of pretty obvious who's who, and I think it makes sense in the idea of like, oh yeah, currently the Sith are in hiding, so they are going to have a role in society as well as secretly being a Sith Lord. Here we have Jedi Master Indara, who we basically know now from the recent clips and stuff like that, she's going to die in the first episode. Most of the clips we've seen from the show have been a fight between May and Indara. They haven't shown us the end of it, but we effectively know she dies. For instance, you can see this. One of the posters from before is, of course, this one here with the bloody lightsaber. And it is her lightsaber. It should be noted here with the copper accents and stuff like that. And then if you zoom in, you can see her lightsaber has all these copper accents. So Indara does die during this confrontation. And part of the dynamic of the fight is that May doesn't use a lightsaber. So this is, I guess, where the blood comes from, is that she gets stabbed to death with a, normal weapon rather than a lightsaber. Now, the significance behind that, we're not really sure. Maybe that's part of becoming a Sith Acolyte, is that she has to take down Jedi without using a lightsaber herself. But that's the whole point of, like, what are we doing here? Obviously, to a certain degree, based on what we know, May is trying to become the true apprentice of this Sith Lord. And I guess she's doing these assassinations as a test. And this is why it's so difficult. Because otherwise, what we've been told about her is that she is a former Jedi Padawan of Soul. So she should have a lightsaber herself, but she obviously, for whatever reason, isn't using one at the moment. Jedi Master Soul, of course, is here. From flashbacks, there is maybe the implication that he trained under Indira, or at the very least, they were Jedi Knights / Masters at the same time. So at least these two know each other. And even though she's going to die in the first episode, I guess, she is involved in flashbacks from what we can see. Because that's another part of this show that I think has been a little bit hidden in some of the trailers, is that I think it's pretty clear that there is going to be a full-on flashback kind of arc, that the history of how the Jedi come to train May is really important. And especially if there is like a twin sister involved, the specifics of like who is who and what's going on here, because they're clearly emphasizing like this dual aspect. Like, why would you put the same character in the same poster twice if there wasn't something like this going on? Because as we get into some of the screenshots that I have, let me just quickly cover some of these characters. So we have some of the Jedi kind of characters here. Again, their names off the top of my head, I'm not super sure about, so let's just go to the Star Wars databank. Jeki Lon, Yord, Fandar, Vernestra, of course. We have one of these kind of Force witches, Mother Anasea. Kel Naka is our Wookiee Jedi. Indara, of course. Torben is here, who is another interesting one, and I'll just bring up his entry here while we're here, because the databank is quite interesting about him. Clearly, the picture here is of a Padawan, but you can see here, Master Torben is a Jedi Master stationed at a Jedi outpost. Now, I think one of the clips, I think we get to see him as a Master. And based on some of the stuff that I'll show you, something goes on with this character. And I think he's going to be important in ways that I think is maybe a little bit more plot relevant than we actually think. And then, yeah, this character here, Jackie, is Soul's, I think, current Padawan, I think is the idea here. This character here is, what's it, Kimir? It's like Qimir, I think, who's like a arms dealer or something like that. But again, there's some interesting stuff going on there. So obviously in terms of like some screenshots, I don't have too many, like I said. Knowing that, okay, May and or the twin sister or whatever's going on here meets up with the Sith Lord. So at the very least, we know we get a scene that's just purely like dark side characters talking to each other, which is exciting, I think, by itself. I'd like to know where it's taking place, what's going on. Like what is the Sith Lord's plan in all of this? Is he just trying to get a good apprentice and he's just going to mess with the Jedi? Or is there something specific about, like, I'm specifically targeting some skilled Jedi here to kind of thin the herd or something like that? Or is this something like deeper? And that's where like the flashback feels sort of important, because it does feel like the Sith Lord is kind of from behind the scenes manipulating things in terms of bringing the Jedi into conflict with the Force Witches to cause some sort of an issue. And I'm guessing the takeaway coming out of this, because again, we have the whole Phantom Menace thing of like the council are like, we haven't really seen a Sith Lord in a millennium, 1,000 years. When if there's this whole incident where they encountered someone like that, why didn't they acknowledge it? Well, there's ways around this, of course, and that's where I think there is a few ways to do this. Obviously, anyone who specifically encounters the masked guy with the red lightsaber probably is going to get killed. Or even if that is the case and that news gets reported back, if you orchestrate something else happening, you can easily do a thing where like you lay the blame on a dark Jedi because of stuff that we'll see as we go through this. So yeah, obviously he has a red lightsaber. That's pretty exciting. May, of course, is our kind of main character here. Again, highlighting she's using a knife, not a lightsaber, even though she should theoretically have one. Here's the scene, of course, highlighting that Soul takes May, I guess, as an apprentice. May, I guess, lived with these Force Witches, these Night Sisters, or whatever way they're going to go about doing it. And he takes her as his apprentice at this point. But what's interesting here is that, based on the prequel logic, is she not too old to be trained? But how does that really factor in during this stage of things in a way? Is it maybe because of this event why it becomes a thing where like you're too old? And is there something significant here of like she's particularly powerful because she comes from the Force Witches and what's going on there? Because clearly there's an incident that happens surrounding them taking her as a Jedi Padawan. So what happens here? Did the witches get wiped out? Because there's a bunch of shots where you see like fire and an incident happening. And then you can see here Torben gets like magic controlled or something like this here and kind of falls to the ground. So does he become possessed? And this is just something that's always there within him. And so he's just placed at a random outpost. And then there's a shot in one of the trailers where I think you see an older Torben, because I think this is from the flashback. So I think you see an older Master Torben being confronted by May, effectively. So, like, what's going on there? Obviously, the two technically met or were in the same location as, like, this, I think, suggests. I think. And then, of course, yeah, kind of slightly closer up look at the Sith Lord here. So, of course, masked, with the notable thing on the mask here being the sort of the grin, the kind of smile as being the one bit of like almost color on the mask. Otherwise, it's kind of completely hidden and stuff like that. I think it's a cool looking Sith mask. Obviously, I think the big thing is that we want to see the character take that off so we know who it actually is. Because I think they have to be careful about how they do this, in that I think the reveal of who this is has to happen like early. I don't think this can be an end of the season type thing. The end of the season reveal when it comes to the Sith, I think, should be about, you know, is this the Master, or is this the Apprentice, or something different? Like, I think this is the show that needs to actually full on secretly show us, like, and here's Darth Tenebris. This was actually a bit of a nobody. He was manipulating things. This guy on screen was manipulating things, but actually he was just being manipulated by someone else. Because you have to create the gravitas surrounding your current Sith master, the latest in the Bane line. They have to have the gravitas of effectively Darth Sidious. And if you've read the Darth Plagueis novel, Plagueis has that 100%. And I think you would say Tenebris has it as well. They both felt like, yeah, I buy this character being the current master of the Sith. That's what this character has to kind of live up to, unless there's someone else in the background, which there probably is. Because again, we assume in the early episodes, because they're showing us this character already in the promos, that to me suggests that we're getting the reveal of the Sith Lord within the first 2 episodes. And I'm assuming that the show, in addition to having this whole flashback story, that it is going to also focus quite heavily on, well, the Acolytes are going to have to meet up with the Sith Lord to know what to do next. And if it is some sort of a test thing, then there's going to have to be quite a lot of Darksiders scenes. And so that's what I had always heard, at least initially, about this show, is that I thought the intent was that this was a show kind of mostly told from the perspective of the dark side users, of the Acolyte, of the Sith Lords, looking at the Jedi. Whereas the trailers, I think, have almost led you to believe that it's the other way around. It's the Jedi encountering this stuff happening. But May does appear to be our main character. So when she's not directly interacting with Jedi, she should be doing Darksiders stuff and interacting with other Darksiders. And so that has to be where the setup on that side of things actually is. What else do I have here? Yeah, one of the TV promos shows us that, okay, Vernestra gets to use her lightsaber at some point. And it shows us, for the first time in live action here, the light whip version of her lightsaber. She has an interesting kind of transformable lightsaber, effectively, where she can kind of I think she twists it and it changes her normal purple blade into a purple light whip. Now, anyone complaining about this obviously hasn't paid attention, because one, this was debuted in the High Republic, some of the earlier novels, like years ago, but then also light whips are in Legends. Like if you read the Darth Bane books, the character Githany has a light whip, and then I think there's even a much older EU character who has a light whip as well. So this is something that's been around for like a long time in the franchise. No one should be complaining about the existence of a light whip. So that's kind of cool. And then for anyone wondering, like, purple lightsaber, that should be Mace Windu. Well, as far as we're aware, if you read the novels, Vernestra Rwoh is a prodigal enough Jedi to where it makes sense that she's a purple lightsaber wielder. Like, she lives up to the title that you would expect to have of someone who has such a unique color of a lightsaber. So there really shouldn't be any worries there based on the way she's presented in the novels. Like, she is going to be a veteran Jedi Master at this point. So it'll be interesting to see her exact role, though, in the series, and what's happened here. Does she allude to anything that happened in the novels, but that would be referencing 100 years ago? Is interesting. And then, yeah, this is the scene I was referring to earlier on when it comes to, like, is there a twin? Is there some personality thing going on here? Master Soul, we see it's Master Soul in the present day. This isn't a flashback. As a part of the mission, they track his apprentice down here. And you can see here, she's wearing clothes that we don't see her use in any of the other clips. And she's really emphasizing that, like, I didn't do it. Whatever you're accusing me of, I did not do. And she seems like basically a completely different person here. She believes it. And Saul is obviously very confused about what's happening here. And I think this probably is highlighting the idea that it is a different person. Unless this is just an amazing acting performance, there's some sort of a twist like the twins thing that's happening here. What I don't at the moment really get here is that the way you would interpret this on the most basic level is that, well, the girl they took from the Force Witches becomes Soul's apprentice. At some point she leaves the Jedi Order or goes missing or something like that, and turns up again as a acolyte to a Sith Lord, killing Jedi. What's with the other sister? Does she just stay with the witches and go somewhere else? And then this gets into the idea of, wait, in which scene is he actually interacting with his apprentice? That what if the assassin May is actually not the apprentice, the Jedi like Padawan May, and so we have a situation like that. It's kind of hard to predict at the moment, because they could do it in a way where like one of the sisters is just completely almost like irrelevant to the plot outside of being a distraction, just because, oh, I'm not involved in any of this, I just happen to look like her. And then the focus switches back to the main sister, or the two of them are very important for different reasons. Like, what if Padawan May actually did just leave the Jedi Order, and this is her just trying to go about her life normally outside of the Jedi Order, and she's highlighting that I didn't do anything, but that there is this other one, like this other sister, that either the Force Witches kept a secret, whatever incident happened on the planet where they took the other sister, the other one was left behind or something like that, but left behind with a bit of a disaster, and so has vengeance on her mind against the Jedi. There's a few ways to go with this, certainly, and it makes me wonder, like, are both characters like main characters or not? I don't know what to make of that. But yeah, I'm intrigued heavily by this show at this point. Like a lot of the Jedi characters, I feel like I'll get to know them when we see the episodes, but just the potential for actual canon Sith Lord content to bridge the gap between basically Bane and the initial run up into Palpatine. That's what I'm excited for, because it feels like the material that Disney have put out has utterly avoided, almost afraid of touching on this stuff. And finally, this is a series, because the High Republic novels so far really haven't touched on the Sith. The Sith have not been a focus at all. They've been noted like once or twice historically in the High Republic, but they've not been... We've not seen a Sith Lord in the books up to now, and we're getting towards the end of the main High Republic novel story. So this is an opportunity for the shows to actually kind of deliver what the books aren't quite delivering, which is that Sith Lord content in this big era of Star Wars now. The fact that there's so much more, it seems like, going on with the main character, if there is kind of the same actor playing like twins or some sort of crazy personality thing, the absolute potential at play with this Sith Lord character here is really intriguing to me. And then one of the themes that the show obviously is trying to cover based on interviews is that they're going to show the flaws of the Jedi. So one of them, I'm guessing, is going to be about whatever way them taking May to become a Jedi, they maybe didn't do it right, and that causes issues into the future. Otherwise, I'm just intrigued to see how they go about actually, actually getting across the idea of, like, here's how the Jedi have fallen. Because typically you'd say it as, like, the main problems with the Jedi are that they can only act if the Senate effectively allows them to act, and there's that whole part of it. But this feels like it has to be more of the criticism from the Sith Lord perspective, which is a much more interesting thing. Like, that's one of the great things throughout the Plagueis novel, is seeing Plagueis Tenebrous and then Plagueis Sidious just talk about the Jedi, and this is why we as Sith Lords, like, hate them and don't like the way that they do things. I want to get into that stuff. So I think there's a ton of potential with this show. Obviously, it requires strong execution just in terms of what happens, but then the writing also needs to be good. I think that they've given this show the time, care, attention, money required to be really good. And I think if this does end up doing well, I think it's going to be a major thing for Disney. Like, if this becomes like a multi-season show that can eventually get to like introducing like a full-on like Plagueis down the road, that's super, super intriguing to me. And I hope it pays off for them, because Star Wars needs something like this to work. A relatively like disconnected from the Skywalker saga thing to actually like deliver and intrigue people. Because I think they've kind of been struggling with what exactly to do, as you can sort of tell with the fact of like sort of what shows are successful for them, in a way what their movie plans are. This would be really cool to work. And I hope when it actually comes out, people do give it a chance. I know there was the thing, especially with the first trailer, where it got heavily bombed with dislikes, which I don't quite understand. Like, I understand if maybe the trailer you watched it and it didn't blow you away, but I don't think the trailer did anything that came across bad to me. So I think there's just a bit of a bad kind of taste in people's mouth about sort of recent Star Wars, and this show is getting targeted because it's High Republic, which some people don't like for other reasons, and all this sort of stuff. I hope people do just give it a chance, because I think the more and more I've looked into this, the more and more I think it's going to shape up into something really, really interesting. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are heading into The Acolyte. Which characters excite you? And I think the big questions I've had from my discussion are, of course, what are your thoughts on the whole twin situation? What's actually happening with this actress playing two separate characters? And then the big one here, Sith Lord. What are we actually going to get when it comes to Sith Lords of this era? Is this just a bit of a fake out and it's actually not really a full-on Sith Lord, that this is actually more of a Ventress style character? Or are we actually dealing with a Bane line Sith Lord of some sort? What do you think we're doing here? But yes, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.